Hello and welcome to this new topic looking at transporting animals. So in previous lessons with me we've looked at biological molecules, we've looked at nucleic acids and nucleotides. Now we're going to start looking at how substances can be transported around animals. So today's title is Transporting Animals. You need to write that in your book as you would do for any other lesson. By the end of this lesson you should be able to name some reasons as to why transport systems are needed in animals. You should be able to explain what an open circulatory system is along with its advantages and disadvantages, and you should be able to explain what a closed circulatory system is along with its advantages and disadvantages. So multicellular organisms need to transport substances for various reasons. Okay, so we can start by saying that multicellular organisms need transport systems for ... The first one is so that cells can get reactants for metabolic processes, so that cells get reactants for metabolic processes. Essentially, because multicellular organisms have a small surface area to volume ratio, they can't just absorb it from their environment, okay? If you are unicellular, you can just absorb the substances you need from your environment, but because multicellular organisms are multicellular, they can't do that. So I'm just going to put underneath here that multicellular organisms have a small surface area to volume ratio, and therefore cannot just absorb substances they need to supply them to all cells from the environment. Supply them to all cells. Turn my heater off because I'm going to melt. To all cells from the environment. So what I'm trying to say here is if you are a single cellular organism, so if you're unicellular, you can simply absorb substances you need by diffusion. Okay? You can simply absorb them and use them. If you are multicellular, so instead of being made up of one cell, you're made up of hundreds, if not billions of cells, or trillions even. Okay? So you're made up of all these cells. If you try to absorb substances from your environment exactly like the unicellular organism did, so I'm going to put unicellular here, we can put multicellular here. The problem we're going to have is that if you try to absorb substances the way that the unicellular has, it will only reach this cell here. all of these cells will not get the substance they need. So multicellular organisms need transport systems to ensure that all cells get reactants for metabolic processes. Now, just to tidy this up a bit, metabolic processes are basically all of the reactions that take place within a cell. So all of the reactions that take place in a cell. Okay. Another reason why multicellular organisms need transport systems is because substances such as hormones and enzymes are usually made in one place and then needed elsewhere. So enzymes and hormones are made in one place but needed elsewhere. So by having things like a circulatory system, it allows enzymes and hormones to be transported. So we can put underneath that circulatory systems can transport these. Okay. Another reason why multicellular organisms need transport systems is so that nutrients from food are transported to cells. So nutrients from digested food can be transported to cells. If you don't have that, they would just stay in the small intestine, never to be used by any other cell. And finally, waste substances made in cells can be transported so that they can be excreted. So waste substances made by cells can be transported for excretion. Okay, so multicellular organisms need transport systems. They need them usually so that cells can get reactants for metabolic processes. This is because multicellular organisms have a small surface area to volume ratio and therefore can't just absorb the substances they need from the environment to supply all of their cells. So, for example, unicellular organisms can just absorb substances from their environment and use them. If multicellular organisms relied on that, only the cells on the surface would get the substances they need. The ones in the middle wouldn't get anything. Metabolic processes are the reactions that take place within a cell. Other reasons why multicellular organisms need transport systems so that enzymes and hormones, which are made in one place, can be transported to other areas that need them, so that nutrients from digestive food can be transported to cells, and so that waste substances made by cells can be transported for excretion. This is a video. You can pause it whenever you want. So just because I'm clearing the screen doesn't mean you can't pause it and continue with your notes. So, our next keyword, circulatory system. Circulatory system. A circulatory system in biology can be defined quite simply as the transport system within an animal. The transport system within an animal. Now, these can often be referred to as mass transport systems. So if you're asked in an exam to talk about mass transport systems, they're asking you to talk about circulatory systems. They're called this because they transport lots of substances around animals. So I'm going to put underneath there in regs, it's important that these are known as mass transport systems as they move many substances around the animal. Around the animal. Now, there are different types of circulatory system. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is an open circulatory system. So we're going to talk about an open circulatory system. Now, an open circulatory system is a circulatory system that does have a heart, but doesn't have very many blood vessels that contain a transport medium. Okay? So we can define this as a circulatory system with a heart, but very few blood vessels that contain the transport medium. That contain the transport medium. Okay? Now notice that I don't say contains the blood. Blood is an example of a transport medium, but it's not the only one. Okay? We're going to be talking in a minute about transport systems in insects, and these don't use blood. Okay? So transport mediums include things, so e.g. blood. So blood is an example of it. Okay? Now, in an open circulatory system, the transport medium, which is known as hemolymph, is pumped from the heart into what's known as a hemocyl. So we can say that in open circulatory systems, comma, hemolymph, H-A-E-M-O-L-Y-M-P-H, LYMPH. Hemolymph is pumped from the heart into a hemocyl. Where have I gone? HAEMOCOEL. Okay. Now, in this example, we're talking about insects. Okay, and I'm going to copy this image so that we can use it here. Essentially, what the insect's body consists of is a heart that runs along its back. These pump blood out into an empty cavity known as a hemocyl, and the hemolymph, which is their transport medium, their equivalent of blood, carries things like nutrients and waste products to and from cells. Okay? So I'm going to make that a bit smaller. I'm going to place it down here out the way. And we can get a couple more keywords out of the way. So we've also got hemocyl, HAEMOCOEL, HAE, that is an E, MOCOEL, hemocyl. A hemocyl can be defined as the open body cavity in an open circulatory system. Open circulatory system. Okay? So the hemocyl is just the open cavity inside the organism. Imagine if you didn't have any blood vessels and your blood was just sloshing about inside your body, not in any blood vessels. The open cavity where the blood is found would be known as the hemocyl. Now, insects do not have blood. They have something called hemolymph. HAEMOLYMPH. Hemolymph. Hemolymph can be defined as the transport medium in insects. The transport medium or blood, and I'm going to put that in speech marks because it's an equivalent, or blood in insects. Okay? Now, in insects, the hemolymph only carries nutrients, waste products, and cells involved in immunity. So, only carries, I'm going to put in regs, it's important, only carries nutrients, waste, and cells involved in immunity. Now, this is different to your blood. Okay, so the blood in mammals is slightly different because the blood in mammals also carries oxygen and CO2 from the lungs to the cells of the body, or vice versa. Hemolymph does not carry oxygen or CO2. Remember, insects have these tracheoles which deliver oxygen and remove CO2 directly from and to cells. Okay? So I'm going to put here, it does not carry oxygen or carbon dioxide as tracheoles, can't remember how you spell tracheoles deliver these directly to / from cells. So while insects have this hemolymph, the hemolymph, which is their equivalent of blood, only carries nutrients, waste, and cells involved in immunity. It doesn't carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. The reason being for this is because insects have something called tracheoles, which deliver oxygen directly to and from cells. Okay? Now, insects have a heart that runs along the length of their body, which pumps hemolymph through the hemocyl. So, the heart, I'm trying to save space, the heart runs along the back of the insect and pumps hemolymph into the hemocyl. Okay, so it's got a heart along its back which pumps blood into the hemocyl and then picks it up at the back end and pumps it through again and again and again. It just keeps the hemolymph circulating. Now the only problem is with this is that it doesn't maintain a steep concentration gradient. So for example, you don't have a large concentration gradient of nutrients in the hemocyl and a lower concentration in the cells of the insect. There is no major concentration gradient. At the same time, insects are unable to direct hemolymph to specific parts of the body. So in your body, your brain can direct blood away from your digestive system to your muscles when you're in a fight or flight response, for example. However, insects can't do that. They can't direct hemolymph to where they want it to be. So the only negatives, or the two negatives you need to know about for an open circulatory system is, we can say, but this system does not maintain steep concentration gradients nor does it allow the insect to direct hemolymph to specific parts. So, a circulatory system is a transport system within an animal. They're also known as mass transport systems, as they move lots of substances through animals. One example of a circulatory system is the open circulatory system. This is a circulatory system with a heart but very few blood vessels that contain a transport medium. Transport mediums are things like blood or hemolymph. In an open circulatory system in insects, the hemolymph is pumped from the heart into a hemocyl. A hemocyl is the open body cavity, so the cavity just contains all of the hemolymph, and hemolymph is the transport medium or the blood in insects. Now, hemolymph only carries nutrients, waste, and cells involved in immunity. It does not carry oxygen and carbon dioxide, as tracheoles deliver and remove these gases from cells directly. The heart runs along the rear side of the insect and pumps hemolymph into the hemocyl. The only problems with this system are that it does not maintain a steep concentration gradient, so diffusion is much slower in the insect between the cells and the hemolymph, and it does not allow the insect to direct hemolymph to specific areas. Now, there are some exceptions to this, mostly in flying insects, but for the broad spectrum of it, it's best to say that they don't have the ability to direct hemolymph to specific areas. So that's our open circulatory systems. Sorry, I'm having a drink. Let's go a bit closer to home. Let's look at closed circulatory systems. Now, a closed circulatory system is where blood is pumped via a heart and the transport medium is enclosed in vessels. Okay? So we can say that transport mediums are pumped by a heart through vessels, and we can say such as blood vessels, I'll put in brackets next to that, such as blood vessels. So where open circulatory systems have a heart and blood is not pumped through blood vessels, closed circulatory systems are the opposite. They do have a heart and they are pumped through blood vessels. Now, what this means is that the transport medium or the blood never comes into contact with the cells of the body. Okay, and this seems to be a common misconception. So we can say that blood pumped through blood vessels does not come into contact with the cells of the body. Okay? Blood stays within the blood vessel whilst it exchanges substances with cells. Okay? Now, in a closed circulatory system, blood is pumped around the organism under high pressure. And blood can be directed to specific parts. It can be directed to areas of the organism that need it the most. So we can say that blood is pumped through blood vessels under high pressure. So blood is pumped through blood vessels under high pressure. And we can also say in a closed circulatory system I'm going to stick to red because it's a very important point, that blood can be directed to areas of the organism that need it most. So, for example, when you're in a fight or flight response, blood is moved away from your digestive system and to the muscles of your body. Now, there's two types of closed circulatory system. So there are two types of closed circulatory system. The first one we're going to talk about is a single closed circulatory system. So number one is a single closed circulatory system. Single closed circulatory system. That should say circulatory. Single closed circulatory system. Now, a single closed circulatory system can be defined as where blood travels only once through the heart for each complete cycle of the body. For each complete cycle of the body. Now, an example of a single closed circulatory system is that usually found in fish. Okay? So this diagram that I've just copied from the PowerPoint shows the circulatory system of a fish, and fish do have a single closed circulatory system. Essentially, their heart consists of one atrium and one ventricle. This pushes blood through the blood vessels, which go around the body once before returning back to the heart. Okay? So, single closed circulatory systems only have a single loop of the body for each time the heart pumps blood. Now, in these systems, blood passes through two sets of capillaries. The first set takes gases and the second set takes nutrients. So when blood is pumped around this system, first of all the blood is sent to the gills where gas exchange happens, and then it is sent to the rest of the body where absorption happens. Okay? So in the gills you would get gas exchange, but in the rest of the body you will get absorption in the small intestine. Okay? And then this blood that picks up these gases and it picks up nutrients from the food, delivers it to other cells as to pump round. So it literally goes in a single loop. So we can say that these systems have two sets of capillaries comma, The first pick up gases, while the second pick up nutrients. Okay? Now, as a result, fish are very metabolically slow. Okay? As a result, blood is pushed through these blood vessels very, very slowly in order to allow exchange of materials to happen. This also allows blood to return to the heart after it has released all of the substances it has to carry. So we can say, this isn't red by the way, that blood moves slowly through blood vessels to ensure the exchange between blood and cells takes place. Now, while they can still direct blood to where it needs to go, a disadvantage of a single closed circulatory system is that it does not maintain a high concentration gradient. So because blood is moving through the blood vessels at such a slow rate, and substances are constantly being exchanged between the blood in the blood vessels and the cells of the body or the cells of the fish, this means that eventually equilibrium's reached, and there is a small concentration gradient as you move closer to the heart. So by the time you get back to the heart, the concentration difference between the cells of the body and the cells inside the blood are so small that there's very little diffusion taking place. So we can say that a disadvantage is this system, I'm putting it in red because it's important, this system does not maintain steep concentration gradients between blood and body cells. Okay, so a closed circulatory system is one where a transport medium pumps blood from a heart through blood vessels, such as blood vessels. Blood is pumped through blood vessels and does not come into contact with cells of the body. They are separated by a wall of a blood vessel. Blood is pumped through the blood vessels under high pressure, and blood can be directed to areas of the organism that need it the most. There are two types of closed circulatory system. We've got a single closed circulatory system where blood travels only once through the heart for each complete cycle of the body. An example of this would be in a fish. In a single closed circulatory system, there are two sets of capillaries. You've got capillaries in the gills and capillaries in the digestive system. So blood picks up gases, gas exchange happens in the gills, and absorption, the movement of digested food particles or molecules from the small intestine into the blood happens, and then it's pumped round again. And as the blood moves around, it transports substances to cells that need them. The second type of closed circulatory system includes what is known as a double closed circulatory system. And this is the type of circulatory system that you've most likely heard of before. So number two, is a double closed circulatory system. Now, a double closed circulatory system is where blood travels through the heart, where blood travels through the heart twice for each complete cycle of the body. For each complete cycle of the body. Now, this is the circulatory system found in mammals. Okay, this is the circulatory system that we have in our bodies. We have one loop which has oxygenated blood, and we have another loop that carries deoxygenated blood. But if we were to start at a single point inside the circulatory system here, we would start at point 1, say, we would go through to point 2, and then back to point 1. So blood travels through the heart twice for each complete loop. Now, in this, blood only travels through one set of capillaries, and therefore there is a high concentration gradient and high pressure is maintained. So blood only travels through one set of capillaries so the blood maintains high pressure. Now, along with the other advantage of having the blood separated from the rest of the cells, the blood is stuck inside of blood vessels, other than having the ability to move blood to wherever you want it inside of the organism, where it's needed most, as well as being able to maintain high pressure, a double circulatory system also maintains a steep concentration gradient. So double circulatory systems maintain steep concentration gradients between blood and cells. Now, what this means is that we get much quicker diffusion. This will result in diffusion taking place much more quickly. So this results in a much more efficient exchange of materials. Now, we are going to be focusing these lessons on double closed circulatory systems. We're going to be looking at the circulatory system of mammals. So we're not going to do any more on that today. You just need to know that a double closed circulatory system is where blood travels through the heart. So if it starts at point 1, in fact, we'll start at the lungs. Blood goes 1 through the heart, to the other organs, 2 to the heart before it returns back to the lungs. Okay? Blood only travels through one set of capillaries, therefore it maintains high pressure, so blood goes through capillaries at the lungs and capillaries at the other organs. However, that maintains high blood pressure. And double circulatory systems maintain a steep concentration gradient, so there is an efficient exchange of materials. Remember, this is a closed circulatory system, so it still has the ability to direct blood to where it's needed within the organism. So, you should now be able to tell me why transport systems are needed in animals. You should be able to tell me where an open circulatory system is and explain some of its advantages and disadvantages. And you should be able to tell me what a closed circulatory system is, along with its advantages and disadvantages. Should you have any questions about today's lesson, please get in touch by the usual means, either via email or Google Classrooms. Until the next video, take care.